Factor trinomials, reverse FOIL. So remember before when we were doing our FOIL process for distributing. That meant that we would multiply together the first terms, the outside terms, the inside terms, and the last terms. So if we FOILed out this expression, we would get A times C, AC, A times D, AD, B times C, BC, and B times D, BD. So we can see that the first multiplies to our first term, and our last terms multiply to our new last term. Now, in a lot of cases, when we're dealing with trinomials, we're going to end up having something in the middle here where the terms will be in common and we'll be able to add them together. So in that case, we'll have the outside and the inside must add to the middle. So today we're actually talking about factoring using the reverse of FOIL. So we'll be starting with a trinomial and trying to work backwards to figure out what two expressions got multiplied to give us that trinomial. And this may take some guess and check. It's not always going to be really obvious what terms we're coming from. So let's go ahead and work on a couple of examples here so that we can see what it looks like. Okay, so we've got example 1, 3x squared plus 11x plus 10. So when we go to try and break this down, remember we're trying to undo our FOIL, so we're going to end up with two different expressions down here, just like we had two different expressions at the beginning up here. And our first rule says that we want the first terms to multiply together to this first term. So in this case, looks like probably we want something like a 3x and an x. Then we also want our last terms to multiply together to give us this 10 right here. So let's try 5 and 2. And you can also see that in our original expression there should be a sign in between these to tell us whether we're adding or subtracting. So I'm seeing that I've got a plus sign right here, so I'm going to go ahead and just guess that these are both going to be positive. We'll have a positive times a positive will give us a positive. And we'll see how that works out. So one of the things with doing this reverse FOIL is that we're going to use FOIL in order to check and see whether we've gotten the right factored expression. So let's go ahead and multiply together our first terms, 3x and x will give us 3x squared, and then multiply together our outside terms, 3x times 2 will give us 6x, and then our inside terms, 5 times x will give us 5x, and then our last terms, 5 times 2 will give us 10. Now you can see we definitely have common x's here in the middle. So these two are like terms and we can add them together. So we'll get 3x squared plus 11x plus 10. And that is exactly the expression that we started with at first. So we have successfully found our factored form right here. and we can see that it multiplies out to exactly what we want it to multiply out to. So let's go ahead now and do our second example, which is 12x squared plus 16x minus 3. So again, we're going to set up these two sets of parentheses because we're factoring into two different expressions that will multiply to give us this trinomial. So let's go ahead and actually give ourselves a little bit more space right here. We'll have something that multiplies together to give us 12x squared in the first term. Let's go ahead and say 3x and 4x. Seems reasonable because 3 times 4 could give us that 12. And then we also want something that's going to multiply to give us this negative 3. So that might be something like plus 1 and minus 3. So now we have our first multiplying to the first term and our last multiplying to the last term. But we need to check and see whether or not we're going to get this 16 in the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply the outside terms will give us negative 9x, and our inside terms will give us 4x. Ooh. Yeah, if I added those two together, negative 9x plus 4x, that would definitely not give me 16. So that's a problem. Okay, so we're going to have to cross this out and try again. Let's see, is there anything else that I could multiply together to give me that 12? Let's try 6x and 2x. And then we'll go ahead and we'll put a minus 1 right here and a plus 3 right here. Negative 1 times positive 3 would give us this negative 3. So now again we have something that works for multiplying together to the first, multiplying together to the last. This is part of our guess and check. We're going to see now whether or not it'll give us that 16 in the middle. So we'll go 6x times 3 for our outside terms is 18x, and our inside terms is negative 1 times 2x is negative 2x. So now I've got 18x minus 2x, and that will in fact give us our 16x. Dun 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 dun. Okay, so we can go ahead and actually do out our whole FOIL to make sure that we're still on the right track. If we multiply the first terms together, we'll get 12x squared plus 18x from our outside terms minus 2x from our inside terms minus 3 for our last term. And when we combine like terms in the middle, we'll have 12x squared plus 16x minus 3. Exactly what we started with. So that means that this expression right here is the factored form of our expression. Okay.